Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I will introduce our group. My name is Firawati Teus as moderator and the second speaker. My partner's name Andi Maharani Ais Rakib as the first speaker and Ahmad Munawar Eka Sakti as the third speaker. Okay, as you can see in the screen, our topic today is comparatives and superlatives. Let's get started. I will invite Andi Maharani Ais Rakib to explain the material.
Next. Okay, comparatives. Comparative is an adjective or adverb which indicates the number or level of more. In other words, comparative is the level of comparison that is more. For the example, 2 is better than 1. The word underlined in the sentence above is included in the comparative, which explains the comparison that one thing 2 has more better character than the other one. He runs slower than me. The word underlined above is also comparative. We can see that one thing he does something run in a slower manner than another me. Next. Comparative adjectives. For the first is use a comparative adjective plus then to compare to people, places, or things. You can use a comparative adjective plus noun when the comparison is clear from text. For the example is, Lydia is taller than Alex. Gorilla are more intelligent than cows. The bigger house is mine. The more interesting shows are on cable television. Second is, add "er" to the end of most one-syllable adjectives to form the comparative. If the adjective ends in "e" and "r." For the example, small become smaller, low become lower, large become larger, nice become nicer. Third is use more before most long adjectives. Adjectives that have 2 or more syllables. For the example, Jack is more serious than Nikki. Do you think is more important than music? Fourth is some 2-syllable adjectives are used with either or more to form to comparative. For the example is quiet become quieter or more quiet, simple become simpler or more simple. And the last is some adjectives have an irregular comparative form. For the example, good become better, bad become worse, far become farther or further. Next. Next. Okay, comparative adverbs. For the first is, use a comparative adverb plus then to compare to actions. For the example, Mark works harder than Jeff. Kroll drives more carefully than Peter. Second is add er to the end of one syllable adverbs to form the comparative. For the example is fast become faster, hard become harder, long become longer, high become higher. Third is use more before adverbs that end with ly. For the example, quickly become more quickly, frequently become more frequently.
Okay, I will continue the material. Next is using comparatives. The first is using comparatives. There are two common uses of comparatives. The first is explicit, both elements to be compared.
And the last is some adverbs have an irregular comparative form.
Okay, I will continue our material. The next is using comparatives. Using comparatives, there are two common uses of comparatives. The first is explicit. Both elements to be compared are included in the sentence. For example, independence is more valued in the United States than in other cultures. The next is my sister and I are close, but my brother and I are close. The second is implicit. The comparison is with something already mentioned in the text or with something outside the text but known to the reader. As a result, it is not necessary to repeat then the second element after the verb. For example, if people from traditional US culture knew more about other cultures, they perhaps would be more understanding. The next is superlatives. Superlative is an adjective or adverb which indicates the amount or level of comparison that is most or third. For example, she sings most beautifully by far. The underlined word explains that someone or she does something sing in the most beautiful way among others. The other's example, you are the best. The underlined word serves to explain that someone or you has the most or best character among the others. The next is superlatives, adjectives, and superlative adverbs. The first is use a superlative adjective to compare three or more people, place, or things. For example, Ali is the tallest student in our class. Next, Praja is the most beautiful city I've ever seen. The next, what's the most interesting book you ever read? Second, use a superlative adverb to compare the action of three or more people or things. For example, of all my friends, Alicia calls the most frequently. Other example, my red shoes fit the most comfortable of all of my shoes. Third, add est to the end of most one-syllable adjectives or adverbs to form the superlative. Use the before superlative adjectives. It is not as common before adverbs. For example, adjective, I bought the longest torch in the store. For example, adverb, Steph works hardest of all the students. Okay, the material will be continued by Ahmad Munawar Eka Sakti.
Okay, thank you. Superlative adjective and superlative adverbs. 4. Use the most before most adjective that have two or more syllables and adverb ending in lie. For example, Maria is the most careful climber of the group. The Grand Canyon is the most amazing sight I've ever seen. Of all the girls, Brioda selects the most beautifully. 5. For some two-syllable adjective and adverbs, either est or the most can be used to form the superlative. For example, stupid become the stupidest, the most stupid. Cruel become the cruelest, the most cruel. Some superlatives are irregular. For example, goodwill become the best, badly become the worst. Next. More on superlatives, adjective, and superlative adverbs. The first, the opposite of the most in the less. For example, this is the less expensive phone in the store. All the other phones cost a lot more. She drives the less carefully of all my friends. All my other friends drive much more carefully. The second, a professional plays within or of is often used to complete a superlative. Denial, for example, Denial is the longest river in the world. This had in the practice of the tree. Third, remember, if I cooperation is clear, is the not necessary to complete it. For example, this sentence is the longest. She won because she ran the fastest. 4. One of the often comes before a superlative adjective. The superlative adjective is followed by a plural noun. For example, China is one of the biggest country in the world. Conclusion. Cooperatives show how two things or ideas are different. Superlatives compare one thing or idea to others in a group. They are both important in comparison and contrast writing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I think enough. Thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.